Americans to accomplish this goal. Americans must have their freedoms, and I trust the American people and their governors very much. I trust the American people, and the governors want to do the right thing to make the smart decisions, and Joe doesn't know too much. Unlike the Biden approach, our approach is guided by science. That's why we're focused on protecting the high-risk Americans. That is why we're delivering effective medical treatments to dramatically reduce the fatality rate. And that is why we're developing a vaccine and therapeutics in record time. You'll see that, I think, very soon. Sleepy Joe rejects the scientific approach in favor of locking all Americans in their basements for months on end, which I think is something that Scott would be very opposed to. I think I can speak for you. We've been dealing pretty strongly over the last number of weeks. But he wants them in the basement for months on end, and you have governors that have been very, very strict on keeping people in their houses, keeping people in their, wherever they may be, apartments. And frankly, I don't think the results are necessarily better than other results. But he wants to shut down our economy, close our schools, and grind society to a halt. And he wants it done by a federal decree. This would lead to a crippling, long-lasting depression. This would be a crippling, long-lasting depression. And yesterday I showed you the numbers about how well we're doing coming back with auto sales and auto manufacturing and used car sales and housing sales at numbers that nobody would have believed. And we're back and very strong. It's a very strong V. It's almost a straight-up V. We'll be discussing that over the next couple of days. But the economy is coming back, and the employment numbers over the last 3 months are a record in history of our country. And we'll be back next year. I think we'll be maybe even stronger than the previous year, where we set every record in the book on employment and stock market. By the way, our stock market numbers are very close to record, and NASDAQ is actually record over the last 14 days, 14 times now. It's been record, and that's during what we hope will be the more final stages of the pandemic. So if we did what Biden wanted to do, it would shut down our healthcare system and lead to a massive increase in mortality, including suicide, overdose, heart disease, and countless other physical and mental harms. It is very, very bad on the other side of the equation when you do something like that. Those shutdowns are very punitive, very punitive. They hurt a lot of people in a lot of different ways, through depression, through suicide, through so many other things, alcohol, drugs. Biden's approach is regressive, it's anti-scientific, and it's very defeatist, but it'll be very bad for our country. While Joe Biden has been playing politics from the sidelines, he has no clue. We've been solving problems and delivering tremendous results. The most advanced and robust testing system on the planet, the #1 producer of ventilators in the world by far, unprecedented industrial mobilization, biggest since World War II, Operation Warp Speed to deliver life-saving treatments, and very soon a vaccine. What a plan by Joe Biden has actually laid out would do, we've really already accomplished. In fact, many of the things that was well reported over the last few days, every single thing he said to do, every single thing we did, and we did them well. So Biden has no idea on his own. He only knows what he thinks we should do, and he spews it out, and then I guess you could say he plagiarizes, and he really did in our case, because every single one of the events, I think, Kayleigh, we can say that was something we had already done. So we'll defeat the virus, but not by hiding in our basements. He's got to come out of his basement. We'll defeat this virus through a common sense mitigation effort, shielding those at highest risk and unleashing America's medical and scientific genius, which is what it is. And We've already been doing it, and we're very close to having something that's going to be very, very special in the form of therapeutics and vaccines. To Joe, I would say stop playing politics with the virus. Too serious. Partisan politics has no place here. It's a shameful situation for anybody to try and score political points while we're working to save lives and defeat the pandemic. In times of national challenge, Americans, and we are, by the way, we are working with countries from all over the world, and they're trying to learn from us. And some of the countries that you spoke most well about are having a tremendous surge right now, but it'll work out. But Americans must unite together, and they must put politics aside and have to really unite for a common good. 3 vaccines are in the final stage of clinical trials. They're doing really well. We're producing the most promising vaccine candidates in advance. As you know, part of the largest industrialization ever. It's incredible when I meet with heads of companies that are doing this, that are the best companies anywhere in the world. It's incredible where they are, how they're doing, and the speed with which they're doing it, and also the speed with which the FDA is approving things. Because by any other standard, you would have been 2 or 3 years away from being at the point that we're at. By the end of this week, we will have shipped 1,846 rapid point-of-care testing devices to nursing homes, which are a very important source, as you know, for people that are not handling the plague from China very well. This week alone, we're sending 992 testing devices and 450,000 tests to more than 950 nursing homes across the country. And these tests are incredible. These are tests that are all new, very modern. And we're also getting on the tests that are not done immediately with the 5 to 15-minute timing. When they do send them to a lab, they're coming back now in 3 days. So it's a 3-day process, which is about as good as you can do. You have 1 day of delivering, 1 day of receiving, and 1 day in the lab. We're also requiring all nursing homes to test all members of their staff at least weekly. By unleashing America's scientific genius, we have delivered effective treatments. The case fatality rate for Americans over 70 has declined by about 85%. That's a fantastic number. It's declined. That's case fatality. It's declined by 85%. Europe has seen 40% more excess mortality than the United States compared to a non-pandemic year. So you hear the numbers, and those numbers are very interesting, but that's the way it is. We continue to urge all Americans to wash your hands, socially distance, wear a mask when necessary, and when you cannot, distance and protect, very importantly, the vulnerable. Protect people that are older, and especially people that have problems with heart or diabetes or some other problem. Earlier today, very exciting news, very big news all over the world. They're talking about it all over the world. It was amazing. We finalized a historic peace agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. After half a century, Israel and the United Arab Emirates will fully normalize their diplomatic relations. Nobody thought this was something that could happen for a long time. This is the most important diplomatic breakthrough since the Egypt-Israel peace agreement was signed over 40 years ago. We have Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, here. Thank you, David, for being here. We very much, you would agree that this was a big day for Israel and a big day for the world. Good. Thank you, David. You've been fantastic, too. Fantastic ambassador and representative of our country. Thank you very much. The deal that was reached today will enable Muslims to have far greater ability to visit many historic sites in Israel and to peacefully pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is very important to them, which they've wanted to have access to for many, many decades. This is a monumental step to forging ties of cooperation in the Middle East, and I think you're going to have other countries come forward. I can tell you we already do, and they want to make a deal. We could have peace in the Middle East. It would be fantastic. Israel is also suspending settlements in the West Bank, which is a big deal, a bold step toward achieving peace. Israel and the United Arab Emirates have also agreed to immediately expand and accelerate scientific collaboration to develop effective treatments and vaccines to defeat the China virus. They've both been hit. Virtually every country has been hit, 188 countries, and to save lives in their region and in their world. So they are working very much on the vaccines also with us. And again, some very good news is going to take place with respect to that. Our unprecedented diplomatic engagements laid the groundwork for this historic peace agreement, which was just announced a little while ago today. We will not rest as we continue to work toward a world of greater harmony and prosperity for all. I want to thank Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of the United Arab Emirates, two fantastic people, for their vision and their leadership, and I look forward to hosting them at the White House very soon to formally sign the agreement. We'll probably be doing it over the next, I would say, 3 weeks, and they'll be coming to Washington. So that was a tremendous day. That was a tremendous thing that happened, and it's a great sign. We have a lot of other interesting things going on with other nations also having to do with peace agreements, and a lot of big news is coming over the next few weeks, and I'm sure you'll be very impressed, and more importantly, it's a great thing for our country, a great thing for the world. So thank you very much. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. I want to ask you about school-age kids and food. One of the real problems when you shut down the schools, these are kids on reduced and free lunch programs. They need these meals to make it through their day, and with districts shutting down school, what, if anything, can the federal government do to make sure that the kids still get decent meals as long as the schools are out?
Well, you know, we don't want the schools shut down. We want the schools to open, and especially very young children handle it, all children, but especially very young children handle it very well. So we want schools open. We don't want to be in that position. We want schools open. We've made payment, and we would, frankly, if the school isn't going to open, we would much rather follow the child with the payment, give the money to the child, meaning the parents of the child, and let the parents do what they have to do, including bringing the child to another school, because we're finding that whether it's parents or children, people want to get back to school. They want to have their life back. Some people say the Democrats don't want schools open because that's where you have a lot of polling booths. And if you have a school closed, you can't very easily have polling booths at the school. And that's becoming, I think, maybe we'll be able to show that as fact. But that's another thing that they're doing to try and keep people away from the polls. So we have to look into that, but it's you've been reading about it, I've been reading about it, and I don't like it. But we'd like to see the schools open. Then we don't have that problem. Good question. Thank you, Chris.
President, what's your understanding of how long Israel will suspend this West Bank annexation plan?
What do you think? Tell me.
Well, we're putting all our eggs into the basket of peace. We have an agreement with the Emirates. We're going to nail down all the details, embassies, overflights, commercial. Then we're going to extrapolate that to the rest of the region. How long that takes, I can't tell you, but we've prioritized peace over the sovereignty movement. But it's not off the table. It's just something that will be deferred until we give peace every single chance.
And what do you want the Palestinians to take away from this deal, since they're not really a party to it?
Well, but they are supported largely by some of the countries that we're talking to and that have already signed, in the case of the one country, but others will be following. And I think the Palestinians will, without saying it necessarily yet, I think they very much want to be a part of what we're doing. And I see ultimately the Palestinians, I see peace between Israel and the Palestinians. I see that happening. I think as these very big, powerful, wealthy countries come in, I think the Palestinians will follow quite naturally. Yeah, please.
Do you believe that a deal could have been reached without Israel's agreement to temporarily suspend annexation?
Say it again. Could you make it louder?
Do you believe that a deal could have been reached without Israel's agreement to temporarily suspend annexation?
What do you think about that, David? It's interesting.
I think you can't do both at the same time. So I think, again,